So one cool thing that engineers have is lucky charms.
Yep.
What's your lucky charm? I see something up there. Can you tell me about it?
This is jalapeno.
Walk me through it.
All right. So getting back to the family thing, my daughter, when she was about 2 years old, put jalapeno in my suitcase. Jalapeno's got a couple decorations over the years, but she's in high school now. So jalapeno's been with me every show for about 12 or 13 years, sitting right on top of my 108P, and that's my good luck charm. So every day jalapeno gets a little tap on the head, and that's my good luck charm. I give jalapeno a tap on the head. I say hello to Shirt out of reverence for him. Shirt was the previous engineer for Avenged and Slipknot. I look to him for some guidance, and yeah, man, those are my two good luck charms. But yeah, that's how every night I feel like my family's with me, you know?
That's good.
And if anybody takes jalapeno, I'll slit their throat. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I'm here with Bob Strakele. Bob Strakele's awesome. He's with Avenged. There's been a lot of curveballs today.
Yeah, it has been.
Today's been nuts. So what we're gonna do is we're actually go backstage first and talk about some drums and then work our way back here. Today's just gonna be a different day. Enjoy the ride with us.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're like
We're good.
20 minutes before doors and just getting stuff working. So, we'll try and find the drum kit. Welcome to Monitor World. Falling in Reverse World. This is Danny's land.
Okay.
There's those windows right there, so it gets a little difficult.
So he uses the windows and then also you just...
Pretty much uses that, yeah.
How's the audio?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine. And you're not really fine, but you just...
Is it terrible?
This is Backline World. I don't know if you want to see any of this stuff. Basically where all the guitar techs live. Everybody's same situation on closed circuit TV.
And then your drums split, you said, right?
Yeah.
They come back here and split and then you put them back together.
That's one half the kit, that's the other half of the kit. This is where our kit lives. They just gotta strike it in order to fork the other stuff on. Guitar World.
Cool. So Guitar World over here.
Yeah, this is Zacky's World, Fractal Land.
Fractal Land.
So this is all just one guy. Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff. It's my main man, Calvin.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Calvin.
I'm Nick. Nice to
Nick.
meet you.
How you doing?
You're gonna
Good,
be on
thank
YouTube.
you.
Hello.
Calvin looks after Brian, Sinister, stage left.
I'll try.
Yeah, back into
I wanted
Monitor World.
to talk about this
Yeah, jump in
Monitor
there.
World. Tell me a little bit about this. Because everything's blocked off here. I see
Yeah.
you got windows here, but
So yeah,
this is cool.
that's how he sees everything. So this eventually will be following people around.
Okay.
So once the cameramen are in place, he gets a long lens shot, and then he's got a camera on each guy, so he can essentially not communicate, but like read their body language and know what they need.
So how can he see their cues?
They have talkback mics on stage.
Oh, okay.
So we got a comm system that they can talk to him. They can walk up to him, like step on a button and speak with him.
Got it. Got it.
Um,
Cool. Walk me through your.
yeah,
Direct
so
here.
these SSLs are backwards right now. The input to them was on the other side. We're not using a traditional splitter. So this is the split off the SSL into the Avid. We've got some more guts on the back that handle all the MADI distribution and the clocking and stuff like that. Myself, Dylan's World, and Danny are all on the same clock. Since we're sharing a lot of MADI, we're keeping it all clocked to the same. We've got an outboard antelope in there. So all the ears is all Wizzycom. Shore stuff. These are some mic switchers that he's got going on and some combiners. Rechargeable battery docks, and the PD for the rack. And that's where all the MIDI changes take place for all the guitars and stuff like that. That's the time code generation. So yeah, that's essentially Playback World.
Cool.
Yeah. This is RF coordination station. So this is where LJ, our RF guru, lives and does all the scans and does all the coordination for everybody. So this is all networked to the Backline World. So he does all the changes to everything in Backline World from here remotely. So the devices are in each station and he just networks to them and just broadcasts the frequencies.
Yeah. Can we show the LED walls?
Yeah.
I do. So Avenged is really known for like their theatrics and very much of like a pyro, cryo, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this time's a little bit different. You kind of, obviously the openers and the direct supports are here and some dude playing chess over there.
Yeah.
But this one's different.
Yeah, it's a pretty clean look. You know, it's a, very clean stage, just a lot of lighting. These sidewalls were like a projection on the last tour, but they decided to go LED for this one. These front screens are on tracks, so they're automated. They open and close to reveal like different looks with that screen. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And since we're here, talk to me about your
PA?
Your PA.
Yeah, it's 18 K2 aside on the mains, 8 SBs behind it, K1 SBs. And they're just kind of like a low-end extension in an end-fire configuration. 14 K2s on the side. And then we got 18 KS28s on the ground. Today, I don't even know if we have them all. We might, when we're in the thrust configuration, it kind of gets a little lumpy if we just put that many side by side. Yeah, and then some cars for front fills, and away we go.
Away we go. I like it. You can see the opto gates right there for your vocals. And you said, what are you doing for the vocals? Is it SEV7?
Actually, those are the optos for falling in reverse. But yeah,
okay. This
is us. Yeah, so we're V7s for everything except for Matt, and he's on a wireless version of a V7X, which I'm not sure they even make, honestly.
Okay.
I asked them for some, and they hooked me up, and it was it's better. It's working better for Matt tonality-wise. He's got a kind of a very soft, chesty sort of sound to his voice. So it's a little bit more hyped on the top end, which kind of makes it cut a little bit, and pretty noticeable difference. So yeah, I'm not sure if they sell them, but we got some. My home away from home.
Bob.
It's been a day.
It has been a day. It's been a crazy day to watch.
Yeah.
So we're here on a bus.
Yeah, it's loud out there.
It is loud out there. And we're pushing close to doors, so I guess it's cool for people to see the reality of what touring life is like. It doesn't always go perfect.
No.
Can you explain to some of the people what happened a little bit?
Sure. A lot of things happened. Doors are earlier today, so we were all working on our normal daily timeline, and it's a different type of gig for us because this is mostly a shed tour, and we're in an arena. So in an arena. We have a completely different stage configuration, completely different PA configuration. We got that up and running as we normally do in an arena situation, and then they shaved 8 feet off of the thrust, which is good for me for acoustics into the vocal mics, but the problem is we already had the PA in place. So now we have a hole in our coverage because we're trying to aim away from the end of the thrust because it's the most kind of hostile environment for a vocal mic. So and then they pulled 8 feet off, and so now we have a hole in the coverage. Now we have to mitigate that problem. So extra sets of front fills. We had to get cases put on the, get the crew, repatch some amp stuff, get some speakers out of the truck, stuff like that. Then we start line checking, and we had a UPS failure. And so everything went real quiet.
Not like FedEx and UPS, but more of a backup power supply.
Battery power supply. So which happened to have some crucial bits of outboard on it. So my console stayed on, but nothing came out of the PA. And we don't quite know why that happened. So
Hope it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little nervous about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I kind of want to get into how you got into sound.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about this, how do you keep your cool through all that? I know that was kind of tough for me as a new audio engineer, having all that stuff come at you and freaking out and going into lock. How are you able to not get the tunnel vision, not freak out, and just kind of, because you stayed pretty consistent through that entire time?
Yeah, man, it's I don't know the answer to that, but it's a freaking out. You have to be a very systematic thinker, and you have to be like when we were talking on the live thing we were doing earlier. It's just like you have to be prepared for these things, and there's certain things you can prepare for, like feedback and microphone problems and cable problems, but things like power, or it's not necessarily that easy to just instantaneously fix. But freaking out just doesn't help the situation. You have to almost just take a breath and think. And I don't know, man, whenever I get myself into a really bad position mentally, I always just try to remind myself that in 24 hours, things are going to be better.
Sure.
And, as you do this for X amount of years, you're going to go through things like that. Thankfully, it hasn't, knock on wood, it didn't happen during the show.
Yeah.
But it does, and it happens, and then you learn. That's how you learn. I mean, it's like riding, learn to ride a bike. You got to fall down and get back up and do it. So yeah, I try to maintain my cool, but doesn't mean I feel good about it. I'm just not going to freak out about it because it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the whole team has to come together and fix the problem somehow.
Yeah.
Which we haven't quite done yet because we don't know what the problem is.
Well, talk to me a little bit about getting into running sound.
Sure.
I know you didn't just, one day decide to hop on a bus and be in the back lounge.
No.
What got your little spark going?
I used to, play in bands, and I started building a little studio when I was in high school with my friend, and then I actually worked as in kind of the fine dining scene in New York City for a while.
Really?
That's what I went to college for, and I as a teenager worked in some pretty fancy restaurants in New York, which were often closed in the summer because everybody left Manhattan to go to the beach or whatever. So I worked in this fancy ass place, and at night I would intern at a studio, and a band that I knew was like, "Hey, your restaurant's closed for the next month. Why don't you work at a studio? Why don't you come be our front of house guy?" And I was like, I don't really work at the studio. I was learning. I was making coffee for the artists. You know what I mean? That's what I was doing. I had a basic knowledge of things because I already had some gear, and I already but at that time I was doing mostly a lot of synthesizer stuff, but I started playing guitar when I was 5, and I just always liked the technical side of things. So
Yeah.
this punk band called the Bouncing Souls, went out with them in 98, 99, and then they were doing big is when the whole like pop punk Epitaph Records, Fat Records thing was blowing up at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. And I just jumped in the van with them, and that was it, pretty much worked with them for like 7 years, and then decided, it's more of a career. It's becoming more of a career for me versus like early on, it was just like, oh, I'm going to concerts every day, touring the world with my friends and making some money. And then, I just set goals for myself as far as where I wanted to be, and just networked a lot and got a pretty decent reputation in that kind of like punk scene. And
so did you ever go to a production house, or you've always been freelance?
I've never worked for, I've worked for sound companies, but never as like, I never did like a proper training or anything with them. I worked for some local companies in New York City, and I worked at some venues in New York City, and just kind of learned that way. But mostly like, everything that I know, I just learned because I just worked with bands that didn't carry anything. I'd carry 3 vocal mics with me and be on a different desk and a different PA every day. And you just learn to like work fast and troubleshoot stuff and fix stuff. And that was pretty much it, man. And then like, I guess when I started getting into arena stuff, I was working with Rise Against, and this was like 2006, 2007. And they had this band Billy Talent out as their opener. And they were like, we want you to come out and be our monitor guy. And I had no idea how huge they were in Canada and Europe. And I show up to the first rehearsal day, and we're like playing, these kind of rooms, 15, 20,000 people a night. And that kind of put me like immediately into a bigger echelon of, touring, where I was like, it's the first time I was carrying my own console and carrying my own PA. And then from there, I went to that band Simple Plan, another Canadian punk band that was like, at that point, 2008, they were pretty big. And then I just kind of escalated, you just start making these baby steps up and up and up, And from there, I kind of flip-flopped between front of house and monitors for quite a long time, but I haven't done monitors now probably since 2010, 2011.
So we're here with Avenged, and I love the story about you getting with Avenged. And you've done pretty much everything with them, from you say guitar tech to
carpenter
monitor
to
tech. Monitors.
Yeah, my first job with them was Jordan, the production manager, brought me in to fill in on monitors for a couple shows, and then Billy Talent, actually the drummer's brother, passed away unfortunately right before a tour, and I had my bags packed ready to go, and he was like, hey man, like I need an extra hand, one of the carpenters dropped off, you want to fly out tomorrow? And I was like, well, I'm actually ready to go on tour. So I went and did that for a couple tours, just helped them out building the stage and hanging drapes and stuff, and then I guitar tech for a while, and then I eventually became a fill-in front of house guy when Shirt was busy doing Slipknot. And then I was front of house tech for a while. I've kind of done it all, honestly. And then unfortunately Shirt passed away in 2017, and I was the guy that the band knew and that production knew, and it just was the best fit up for them, I guess. They wanted somebody that knew all the music and that they knew personally, I think. So yeah. That's how I got in the hot seat.
So this is their first time touring in, like, what has it been?
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
How are you approaching it this time differently than 6 years ago?
6 years ago was a different situation for me because, Shirt was a very well-respected engineer by engineers and by the band. And, I had big shoes to fill. And a lot of the crew that was on that tour at that time knew me as the carpenter or the guitar tech. A lot of the guys didn't even know that I was a front of house guy, even though I had been for, over a decade, well over a decade at that point. So it was kind of like I had something to prove, but I knew the songs and I knew the guys, so it wasn't like a huge deal. The one thing I wanted to do was make it my own. So I didn't take out the same desk that Shirt had, I didn't want it to be like riding on his coattails. And
what did he have?
He used the Midas Pro X.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. which sounds absolutely amazing. But it was just about that time where Midas was kind of getting a little weird with support and stuff, and I was ready to, just come in and just kind of make it my own. And, but yeah, I mean, as mix-wise, I don't approach it any differently. It's just like work with the band and get the best sounds. They're an amazing band. They're an amazing performers. They really care about their sounds. They care about their arrangements. They warm up incessantly. Like, they're really good. So for Danny and I, Danny's the monitor engineer, we just work with them on the sounds. And if things don't quite work right, we work on the sounds. Like we had a comment earlier, like, did I forget to check the acoustic guitar? And it's funny that he says that because the next day, I told you we're working on a different thing every day. The next day was like, I went to his tech, to Zacky's tech, and I said, this acoustic sound isn't working for me. It's a little muddy. We need to brighten it up. And the next day we revealed that, and it was much more present. It's like a lot of these things in the fractals are built in the studio, and you don't really understand how the tonality, how it's going to work in the context of a mix when you're in a giant space.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it's done in near fields or in headphones. And
Yeah.
it might sound good at the moment until you put hundreds of cubic feet of air in front of it, and then everything changes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to talk to you about, and we can't really see it right now, was the drums. Walk me through your mics with the drums. Walk me through your place, because I know you're with Slipknot. You do inside the toms. For this one, you're not doing it inside the toms. Can you walk me through your drum setup?
Yeah, sure. Kicks are the SE BL8s,
Okay.
which is a boundary mic, like similar to a 91, but voiced quite a bit differently. It's got a pretty hefty low end. It's a pretty massive element for that type of a mic. It's almost like a medium diaphragm condenser.
And you work a lot, pretty hand in hand with SE, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I don't work for SE, but I've become one of the guys that, like, I get the prototypes. I test a lot of stuff for them.
Yeah.
We have a lot of feedback that goes back and forth. We make revisions. They send me stuff. I make comments. They'll go to engineering in China, redo it, send it back to me. It's been cool, because a lot of the time, there's been 2 times where they've been like, we're waiting on you to tell us for a release. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy, but they're a really good company to work for. And, it's great, high quality stuff, and it's really affordable. But yeah, so it's a BL8 on the in, and then we have a D6 pretty much right over it inside as well.
And you do 2 kick-ins, which is interesting.
Yep.
What's the reasoning behind the 2 kick-ins?
Just punch. Like, when you're working with a band that has a lot of double kick, sometimes that out mic just gets too fluffy. There's too much. It just doesn't get out of the way fast enough. I don't use the D6 often, honestly, unless it does something in certain situations where the way they sum works really well for me, but 90% of the time I'm just using the BL8. Snares Buyer 201s, top and bottom. It's always been my favorite snare mic. Sometimes I use a condenser on the bottom, but for this particular drum, that just worked the best. And everything we did with Avenged was pretty much blind tested, So when we went into rehearsals, we tried several different snares, several different types of heads, top and bottom, several different tunings. The drummer's absolutely amazing, and he's really into just like whatever sounds the best. He'll play it. Toms, rack toms are Neumann MCMs, which are like little tiny little guys. We tried a lot of different mics. It wasn't the clear winner at first, but for the configuration of the drum kit, it worked the best because we just couldn't get the mics out of the way for his proximity to cymbals. I'd prefer to probably use a dynamic, but even with right angle jacks, we just couldn't get it to where when he smacks the cymbals, like it wasn't going to hit a cable somewhere. Like we tried 4 or 5 different shows of different mics, and that one was the one that we gravitated towards. We did use DPA 4099s for a little bit, but we were just getting a little too much bleed when he was like hitting that down stage stack. their definition of cardioid's a little bit different than, it's just not as tight as what the Neumanns are. So yeah, Neumann came out to a Slipknot show in Berlin, and they were like, "We got these new things. You want to try them?" And they lent me a few, and they're great. They're really cool. Floor toms are Austrian Audio OC7s, which are Austrian Audio is a company from Vienna that's doing. From what I understand, it's like a lot of the engineering team from AKG, and they're pretty sick. Joe Barisi, the band's producer, called me and was just like, "Dude," and this guy's particular. He was like, "You have to try these on toms." So he put me in touch with Austrian, and they were nice enough to lend me their tom mics are the OD5, which is a dynamic, active dynamic. So it's got like a cloud lifter built into it.
Oh, cool.
They're swivel heads, and then they have the OC7, which is the condenser version, and that's what we're using. Overheads are a pair of prototype SEs. I'm not sure they even have a model number yet. They look like the 4400s. They have a little less pattern control, but they're working out great. Sometimes we started using the OC18s from Austrian, which are unbelievable. But for this tour, we're trying these SEs out because they sent me some prototypes, and I told them I'd capture some recordings, and they're working awesome. They're working great. And then we got a couple little underheads, 4099s underheads, excuse me, for some of the downstage little tiny cymbals. And then we got a Scope Labs periscope behind the kit, which is an Omni.
That thing was cool. I like that.
It's an Omni condenser with a built-in limiter on it, so it's a real trashy, nasty sound that I just use for certain parts. And hats are either KM184s, and the rides are the Austrian OC8s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention too was your. Could you talk about your mics, the octo gates on there, and you have 3 per, and you have it 3 going down into 1. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So each guy downstage, 3 guys, has 3 different mic positions. So they're all on opto gates. They get summed into essentially a splitter or summing box that goes to an effects device. So the reason we do it that way is because I can't often see where they are. So it basically, whatever mic they're coming up on, it comes up 1 fader for me. And they're doing a lot of their effects on their own. It's all time-coded, or the show is time-coded, and Dylan's sending MIDI command changes to these effects devices. And that goes for all the fractals as well. Everything changes, pans, changes patches, effects, everything is just identical every day. So
all direct for the guitars.
All direct.
And bass.
No amps at all.
No wedges.
No wedges.
Very clean on stage.
Yeah, it's great. Not like my other gig where we have 16 M2s on stage. on stun.
I want to do an interview with you for the Slipknot thing. That'd be
yeah, it's a different animal.
Yeah. Follow for that one.
Yeah.
I do want to go to front of house eventually, and we can walk through some of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, now would probably be perfect because we can have some low-level music going on. We can talk about the outboard stuff.
Cool.
It's getting chilly in here.
It is.
How are you?
Okay, we're at front of house.
All right.
Talk to me about this.
In the auto zone. This is my SSL 550.
Is it yours? Do you own it?
No, I don't own it.
Why the SSL?
I don't know, man.
Now, did you start with SSL on this run, or did you actually?
I've always used an SSL for Avenged, yeah.
Really?
So when Shirt passed away, this is what I spec'd, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What about with Slipknot?
Always an SSL.
Okay.
I've been on SSL for like 4 or 5 bands now. I haven't really looked back.
Have you tried any other ones with it, or just diehard SSL to?
No, I just like what I'm comfortable with, you know? It's like everything these days sounds great. It really does. It's just how fast can you do what you need to do on it. And I'm fast on this. I'm not fast on other stuff. So this is what I choose to use, you know? But I'll use anything. It depends on the budget of the band, but these things aren't really cheap, you know?
Yeah. Oh no, they're not. How many inputs you guys running?
90.
How many of those are redundant?
I mean, a lot of them are honestly like talkbacks and
Sure.
stuff like that. So we're like, I'm about 70 off the stage-ish.
That's a lot of inputs for,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you, no triggers, correct? Okay,
No triggers at all.
okay. I don't see a computer for waves. Are you doing waves, UAD, anything?
Nope. No.
Just personal preference? How about any native stuff in here?
Yeah. I use reverbs. I use some of the multi-band compression and dynamic EQs. They have some really cool compressors that aren't on the channel strip, like the so these little enhancer things. The Blitzer is pretty cool, which is their kind of like distressor style thing. You know, it's million frequencies, it's got a wet dry, or million ratios, got a wet dry blend. It's got a little transient designer built in, some distortion. You can blend it. So that's pretty cool. And then all my group compression's done in here.
Can you walk us through your chain?
Yeah. Left, right. So this is a company called Gain Lab. The model is the Dictator. It's a Varimu compressor, so it's program dependent. It's pretty gentle. You don't necessarily hear it like hit a threshold. It's basically the way a Varimu works is the more level you send the tube, the less it outputs.
Yeah.
So it just kind of works with it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So this is a device by this guy. It's called the Spacecraft. This guy Matthew Lane makes it. It's with control. It takes mono information and makes it stereo, or stereo information and makes it mono.
And that's on your master bus.
Not right now, but it will be when we start the show. Yeah. So not for playback, but it looks like it's not set properly, but yeah, it just adds a little.
Yeah, you can still feel that. Yeah.
And somehow the phase doesn't change. It's really bizarre. This guy makes a lot of plugins called Dr. MS. It's used for a lot of mastering engineers. He started building these they came out like 15 years ago, and I think he built like 25 of them. And he just built another round of about 10 or 12, I think. I don't know, honestly, but I was one of the first people to reach out and say, I heard you're building these, can I get one? And it's not cheap, but it's pretty cool. To be honest, it works better for me in the studio. Something about just how much information's happening in the air. I don't know that it translates as well as it does in the studio. This Sans Amp's on my bass DI, just to kind of spice it up a little bit, just a little bit of dirt. It's my vocal group for Matt. So there's two of them because there's a lot of stereo patches. So his lines go from, these are all his lines that are muted. Or sorry, all these are his.
Whoa.
But these two are the ones I use during the show. These are all dry lines. Like we were saying, they get summed into a summing box, then they go to an effects device, and then they come to me. So this is my main left and right, or my main feed. This is for a gag that he does where he's got a chaos pad and a vocoder and stuff. So it's just a different vocal system. That gets grouped to one fader here. And since it's a lot of stereo stuff, that's why I got two distressors. This is my pretty dry drum bus, which is kick snare and toms, no cymbals. And that's on, it's at, I don't know, man, I'm only at 30% of compression, and it's still only doing about a dB or two of compression. So this is the 2500 plus, which has got a wet dry knob on it. So this is basically just adding a little punch. And this is a ADR Compex, which is, this is like the when the levee breaks compressor. So
Okay.
Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
super gnarly, like
Yeah.
really aggressive. A company called Q2 got the license to manufacture them about 5-6 years ago, I guess, maybe even a little longer ago. I have an original one of these at home, and I opened it up and it just didn't look roadworthy, just the way the PCBs are stacked inside each other. So we got one of these Q2s. It's a really unique compressor. It's very aggressive. You can get this expander going where it basically will gate everything in between hits.
Oh, that's
which
cool.
is how you can get a crazy pumping sound. And then you can put it in limit mode. So once it hits a certain threshold, so you can compress and limit at the same time and just tell it where you want it to. It's a really quirky device that you kind of have to learn how to use.
Yeah.
When you first start messing with it, you're like, this thing sucks. But it's really quirky. And back in the day, they made a mono version as well called the Vocal Stressor, which was more of a channel strip, had some EQ and stuff on it. 1176s are my background vocal group. So, like I said, that's it's 6 microphones, all on opto gates that go to a group.
Yep.
So they're summed into their own effects devices, and then I just sum them all to a background vocal group, and I just smash the living hell out of them with those things. This is everything playback related. So the Clariphonic is a high frequency shelving EQ that's in parallel. So you can really wind into it and you don't really hear it. It just kind of puts like a sheet of glass over everything. The tracks that we use aren't really any kind of cheater tracks. It's a lot of orchestral stuff, horns, stuff like that. So no like guitar solos or any of that stuff.
Sure.
And the TG1 is just managing all that stuff as well. So it's just keeping it level, and the TG1's a pretty gooey, like warm compressor. So just kind of warms it all up a little bit. And it's not doing a whole ton, maybe 3 dB max, but it holds it all together. The Cassidy's Matt's vocal. And then the 990 is just kind of a trashy reverb sound that I use for the drums, and then the rest of the verbs are in the desk. This is SATA dock. So SATA drives are a lot cheaper than buying like an actual hard drive with connectivity on it. These are 2 terabytes a piece, and they're like $99, you know? So, you know, just put everything on that. 2 Mac Minis, one for my smart system, one for my record rack, and the Octapre is my USB pre for my reference mics, and it takes a reference from the console. I got 2 Earthworks, and then that all goes here. And this is set up with my reference, 2 different mics, and a solo bus. So if I'm having feedback issues, that's maybe I can't quite see with the ambient mics that are in the room, and I need it to be a little more precise. It's kicking off my solo bus 2. So I just wind solo bus 2 into that, and it shows me what's happening exactly at the microphone.
All right, you got a fly date. You can only take 2 of them. Which 2 do you take?
2 what? 2 bits?
Yep.
Honestly, I'd probably just take only that.
Really?
I've got it set up where I can do everything in here. Everything in here is on my insert B, and I have a backup on my insert A if I need to. If we were to lose power or something, I would have to uninsert everything, but
Sure.
it's literally just doing that. You know, it's one button push, so not too hard.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, man. We got this is SSL ML32 on the back, so you know, I'll take you around back, show you how the I/O works. So this is essentially a stage box. So we run MADI into here. So all the I/O is done here so that I don't have to have hundreds of cables coming out the back. So this is the I/O for everything in the rack. Comes Maddie from the desk, and yeah, that handles all the I/O. So I go digital to the rack. It does all the conversion in the rack. This is my feeds to smart HDMI's. This is the Cat 5 for the record. So I got two MGBs in the doghouse. Goes through a network switch, just comes there. Pretty slick. That's it.
I love it.
Yeah, pretty easy.
One last question I have for you, and we got asked this a lot when we went live before, but I kind of want to get on to video here, is what advice would you give to younger engineers that want to be where you're at one day?
I mean, if you love it that much, you'll work hard, I hope. You know, it's crucial to learn the basics of things. It really is. It's like, you gotta know how to solder and how to make cables and how to know what a one-legged cable sounds like, and you know what the difference between like a signal hum and a power hum is, and little things like that. And it's just something that comes with experience, you know. So like, my biggest piece of advice is just go work for a production company. Even
So
if it's
don't do what you did. Go for a production company.
I mean, you'll learn a lot faster, honestly.
Sure, absolutely.
You will, because
Absolutely.
a lot of these big production companies
Well,
have,
a lot has changed also. So when you started,
and honestly, like when I started, I didn't know this was going to be my career. I didn't know that I was going to love it so much, you know. And it was just like a moment in my life that was just like, all right, I'm going to do this for a while. But a lot of these big companies like Claire and 8th Day and Solotech, and you know, they have proper training procedures, and they invest a lot of time and money into their people, because it is all about the people. It really is. These sound companies are nothing without their people, and they want their people to be the best, and they want to be able to provide solutions. And you know, I count a lot on the people that I work with to know more than I do. You know what I mean? A lot of what I do is a creative process, and you know, when it comes to like RF and networking and stuff like that, like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know I should, but you know, the way I was brought up in this industry, it's like I didn't need to. You know what I mean? So that being said, I'm maybe a little farther behind than, but I also don't do monitors, so I don't need to know RF. Although it's a great skill.
what would you say? Sorry, another question. What would you say is the best piece of advice you got from one of your mentors?
Don't party. You know, keep yourself, especially in the work environment. You know, when I first started, like I said, I was out touring with my friends, and it was acceptable to like have a beer in the afternoon or do whatever you're doing. And then I remember I had one employer, I had one band I was working for that was like really taken off, and they were like, we're not doing this anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, whatever, you know. And we had a talk, and he was like, the singer was just like, hey man, like if the shit goes down, I don't want the first thing that I think about is that like maybe your head isn't completely in the game. And it was something that always resonated with me. You know, the way that you present yourself is important, and that goes to dealing with stagehands, dealing with your coworkers, dealing with your own stress and your own personal issues that you might have in the back of your head. You know, like learning to work with stagehands, it's like a smile and a handshake and introducing yourself. You can't believe how far it goes, man. Like if you say, when my guys come up to me at loadout, I shake their hands. My name is Bob. What's your name? What's your name? If I have to write it on my hand, I do. Calling people by their name has a certain amount of personality to it that makes them want to work hard for you, because they feel like you're part of your team.
You're not too big for them.
You're not waving saying, hey guy, hey, it's like, hey Chris, I know I asked you to do this, but I'd really like you to do it this way.
Yeah.
I got you, Bob, cool, you know, and it really goes a long way. I mean, your demeanor and the way you treat people, like anything in life, like nobody wants to be treated like crap, you know? So yeah, I mean, that's the way I approach it, you know? Being on tour is partially about your skill, but I would say almost more important, your personality. A lot of people do not want to live with you on a bus if you're not pleasant to be around. It doesn't matter how good you are. It really doesn't. So, you know, keep your head up, treat people the way you want to be treated. I'm not scared to ask people for help, and I'm not scared to tell everybody everything I know. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't get to where I am because I didn't ask questions. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's like I said about cooking. It's like, you got to do it over and over and over again to create your own style, and then when you hear somebody else that you're really impressed with, you're just like, how are you doing that? You know? And 99% of the time, it's like, how'd you get that snare drum sound? It's like, well, it's a good snare and it's a good player. Microphones aren't magic wands. They really aren't. They're gonna pick up, you can't make a kazoo sound like a grand piano. You know what I mean? You just can't. But yeah, I mean, I forget where we were going, but yeah, just work hard, show up to work on time with a smile on your face, get prepared to be tired, get prepared to be dirty all the time. And
when I did an interview with Phil, he told me, he said, I'm paid to be here for an hour and a half, but hired for the 22 and a half hours. I was like, my gosh, that's so good. It was really good.
That's what I tell all my clients. Is like, my rate is to be away from my wife and my daughter. This comes for free. Yeah. Like, if I was at home, I'd be mixing right now anyway. Like, mixing is fun. Traveling is fun. Being away from your family.
Is it hard to be away from them for so long?
Yeah, it is, honestly. I mean, I've been away, my daughter just started high school, and I've been away her whole life. You know, I've been home a lot. Like, we have good breaks, but you know, I can't say it's not painful as a father. It truly is. It's you know, when you get into this, there's a pretty high divorce rate and a pretty high, you know, a lot of the guys I work with still have great relationships with their kids. But you know, thankfully I'm still married, and I don't know how we're doing it though. You know, it's I think because we both grew up in families where our fathers traveled for a living. So it's an environment that I grew up in. It's an environment my wife grew up in. So we make it work.
Well, I don't take out too much of your time. Thank you so much for it.
Oh, dude.
If people want to get a hold of you or follow you on social media, is there somewhere they can follow you, or do they just come to an Avenged or Slipknot show near them?
Yeah, it's B Strakele, Bstrakele on Instagram. I don't do any other socials, so that's the one. It's a private account, but hit me up.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, brother. Pleasure.